Hello, thank you for joining us. Joined today by Mr. J. Windom Kimsey, FAIA, the President, CEO, and third-generation leader of Tate Snyder Kimsey, an architecture firm with offices in Las Vegas, Los Angeles, Reno, and Shenzhen, China. Windom, it is a pleasure to speak with you today.
Thank you, Adam. Glad to be here.
Now, to start off, how does your local community, your local region influence your design?
I'm not like probably most people here. I'm not a native. A lot of transplants here. I grew up in the Southeast, and I think one of the biggest influences is coming to a place where you can always kind of see the sky. You can kind of get a sense of where you are in the world by, you look west, you see a certain mountain range, you see a certain mountain range in the east. And so to me, there's always this relationship between, the sky and the ground and where you are, and always being able to see that. I grew up in a place where you're driving down a street and you see the thing. So, for designing out here, it has influenced me a bit because I think a lot more about that relationship between the building and the sky and ground in a way that, until I moved to a region like this, which was about, 23 years ago, I didn't think about those things when you design. I thought more about the context of, the building next door. But a lot of times we design here where buildings have died, things like that. So it's changed the way I think about architecture. And you probably want to know what the influence really is, take a different set of factors and thinking about design just different than more urban kind of design things. And so, the forms and shapes of the buildings maybe have a stronger influence from, rather than, that 19th century brick building down the street, maybe more from the mountain ranges and the sort of geometry of, that comes from nature. So
interesting. And what do you see as the opportunities for design in your climate and community? And what are the challenges?
Challenges here, where I am in particular, is one of the harshest climates. We're not Death Valley, although we did work on a project there, but one of the harshest environments, to design buildings in. I mean, we've done quite a few projects that are, different levels of leak, temperatures that we deal with. The community, less so. I think this is very open-minded. Nevada is a very libertarian state, so I don't think there's a lot of sort of cultural things I might have encountered, like say I was designing in Tennessee where I grew up about, we want a colonial-looking house. But I think people are more open-minded, but I think the climate's the real challenge here in Nevada.
Absolutely.
Don't hear me.
Sorry, we're having a couple technical difficulties. I'll try not to step on you.
You look a little frozen up, and I'm not, I guess. Right?
I think there might be some Wi-Fi issues today, but we'll truck through it. What do you love about the region you work in, and what is it that you love that inspires you?
Well, like I said, the climate being a challenge, it's also inspiration. But you know what I like about the region? I mean, I've lived in the Las Vegas area for 20 plus years now, and there's a sort of can-do attitude. There's people, when things get hard with the recession, there's a strong willingness to reinvent and do things differently. And I love that about this community. Now, I'll be honest with you, it's taken me a few years to get my arms around that, because this is very different than a lot of other places on the planet. But I think there's what people don't realize, everybody thinks of the Strip, those things about Las Vegas, but there's a very strong entrepreneurial community spirit here that I don't think a lot of people will get exposed to if you're just visiting for a show or a conference or things like that.
Right. And I know you're from the Southeast. What brought you to Las Vegas and brought you to your current practice, and what keeps you there in Las Vegas?
Life events that brought me here. I was working back east, and I got divorced, and it was sort of, like, hit me at a point in my life where I said, I really need to, I felt open for a challenge or do something different. I had a guy I went to graduate school with that was from here, and I can tell you it was furthest from my mind of a place to move, but it was one of those, what the hell, let's try it, see what it's like, and if I like it, I'll stay. If I don't, I'll go somewhere else. And I came here in 1989, and I'm still here, so obviously something stuck or resonated with it.
Something worked, yeah. Now,
yeah.
How do you
probably work more than anything.
Yeah.
Lots of it at the time.
That definitely helps. How do you see architecture having changed in the past 5 years or so? What is your new normal like?
Well, it's interesting, and being the jury chair for the awards in Colorado, one of the interesting conversations we had is how much emphasis to be put in looking at each project. What we found interesting is like being sustainable was something that was really like a baseline. I mean, it wasn't, thought it might be a big differentiator between the project. Everything we saw had some level of it, and a pretty high level. And I think that's changed because in Nevada and other states, but I think the fact that there's that expectation that we look at designing and in a more environmentally responsible way and energy efficiency. To me, that's one of the big changes. Even 5 years ago, I mean, it was a battle to talk to some clients about doing something sustainable. Now that it's just sort of assumed that you know it and you know what you're doing. So in our conversation, we talk to our clients and other things. I mean, those things are real baseline. And so what I find is maybe we can get back, discussion comes back around more to talk about some of the other design things that I think got a little left behind in the scramble by everyone to be green. And I think some of the things about design that mean more than whether, you're using recycled material or you got a lot of daylight, but things maybe that have to do with how the building sits in the community on the site. I think those discussions, are coming back to at least my process more. And so I have to spend less time talking to a client about, the sustainable strategies and things we do. And frankly, we think about those things from the start of any project anyway. And I think most architects do now. I think it's lead, like it or love it, it's really helped raise the consciousness of, designing responsibly in the world.
Right. Well, Windom, we're running a little short on time, but I wanted to just close by asking, given your national experience and your exposure to national architecture, how has that influenced your take on regionalism?
Well, I'll tell you, I don't know if it's a national exposure. I mean, I think we're all citizens of the world, and we see different types of architecture. But I do think there is a strong, there's areas in the Southwest that have a very strong regional. I mean, I think you could even call there's a style of some sorts, a little school down in Arizona, Colorado, maybe folks here in Nevada. We see, it has its own sort of regional style. I think a lot of us here in Nevada, believe it or not, are probably still searching for that. We're not sure but we're kind of an oddball city where we have designers from all over the world working here. So, my take on regionalism, I think it's a appropriate climatical, having these other people come in there's the negatives. We always feel we're losing some of the work to some people from somewhere else, but I think it helps influence us and look at the different ways they're thinking about architecture. So I love buildings that are very regional, but sometimes I like those odd ones that maybe don't quite feel like they belong. I hope that answers it. well enough.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I wish we had more time, but I do thank you so much for your brief and very insightful conversation today.
All right.
And I look forward to seeing you at the conference this fall.